pretend that airplanes in the night sky like shooting stars. I could really use a wish right now.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Straight from the Cockpit. I'm your host, Captain Berman Blaze McGee, and we have a great show for you today. We'll be discussing the air crash that happened in Indonesia with the 737-800 MAX, and talking about the Japanese pilot that was 10 times drunk, 10 times the legal limit drunk. So stay tuned and enjoy this episode of Straight from the Cockpit. Okay, welcome back to Straight from the Cockpit with your host, Captain Berman Blaze McGee. So today's topic, we'll be talking about the air crash that happened in off of Bali, Indonesia. It was a 737-800 MAX. They don't know the cause as of yet. It's all they have is the reports of when it shortly after it took off, roughly 5 miles out. It nosedived and plunged into the ocean. But there have been reports from the previous flight before. They had issues with airspeed and altitude indication, and the aircraft was reported on emergency, and then after a while the captain called back, said the flight was okay, he could proceed, and then subsequently the aircraft was checked, then it was returned back to service, and the initial cause for the altitude and airspeed fluctuations were deemed fixed, and the aircraft was returned back to service. I can tell you from my avionics background that the ADC, which is the air data computer in these large passenger carrying aircraft, it relies heavily on the airspeed and altimeter inputs for the autopilot, which then goes through the FDC, which is the flight director computer. And when there's a problem with the airspeed indication or the altitude indication or the AOA, angle of attack, which is an instrument that's mounted on the side of the airplane to measure if the plane is nose up or nose down, to coordinate with the autopilot system. These inputs are very critical for the air data computer, which ultimately controls the autopilot. And when those are giving erroneous information, and if the pilot has already switched over from manual flight to autopilot, and the air data computer goes haywire or messes up, and typically there's usually two air data computers. There's a primary and then a secondary, or ADC1 or ADC2, so that if one fails, the other one picks up and continues on, and everything should be okay. But the problem is, if it's getting erroneous information from the inputs itself, which is the pedostatic system for the airspeed and the altimeter, then that is where the problem really begins. And I read the initial report from the day before, what the pilot reported, and grounded the not grounded the aircraft, but he wanted to divert and declare an emergency, but ultimately did not have to make the mayday call, and he made a pan call, which is just before making a mayday call, which means you are in a critical emergency once you make a mayday call. But he made a pan call, which is just saying, hey, we have an issue, we need to take care of it, we need to land as soon as practical. And so they were able to work it out in flight. and continued on to their destination. They got there, landed, maintenance checked everything, and maybe did some type of repair. We don't have that data yet to know if they repaired it or something was replaced. But nevertheless, I think approximately 8 hours later, the aircraft was returned to service. And then the aircraft took off at like 6:30 the next morning, and less than 10 minutes in flight, it plunged into the ocean. So it's reasonably to think that it's possibly something wrong with the air data inputs from the pedostatic system that was giving bad information to the air data computers, which subsequently went to the autopilot. Or it may not have been the autopilot, but I'm just guessing based off of my experience of knowing how these flights work. Typically, after the pilot takes off and he climbs through 3,000 to 4,000 feet, he typically turns it over to the autopilot, and the autopilot and flight director takes over, and it climbs and turns and does everything based on what information he has put into the flight director to say he wants to climb to, say, 20,000 feet. He wants to turn to heading 180 or whatever assigned altitude and whatever assigned heading he was given on his departure clearance from air traffic control. So, and then I kind of did a little bit more research and kind of looked at the data on the crashes for 2018 as of to date, and there have been quite a few. There's been I think I'd have to go back to my notes, but and I don't have my notes handy, but I think there's around 21 accidents so far in 2018. Of those, there was I want to say a majority of them, or I won't say majority, I'll say there was a lot because I don't have my notes and I don't want to give you the wrong information. But I will say there was quite a few 737 incidents, and they were fatal incidents. So I think Boeing needs to look into the air data inputs, because I think a lot of these, they all resulted in sudden plunges into the ocean, and they've all been over water, which most overwater flights, the aircraft have to be additionally qualified, which is called ETOPS. So I think there needs to be some look at that from the manufacturing standpoint. Again, I'm not an investigator. I'm not there on the scene. I'm just putting a picture together based on research that I've done, looked into other incidents, and I kind of see somewhat of a trend just based on the initial information. I do not have anything to definitively say this is what's happening. I'm saying it should be looked at. That's it. From my opinion, and that's what I would suggest. And more information will come. They did recover the black boxes, as they're called. They're actually bright orange boxes with black stripes on them. So I know why they call them black boxes, because most avionics equipment is actually in black boxes, but the cockpit voice recorders and the flight data recorders, they're bright orange with black stripes, and that's done for a reason. So if there is a crash, they can find them easily visibly, and they have underwater beacons that's attached to them, so that whenever that comes in contact with water, it will immediately start to send off a radio signal, an emergency signal that can be picked up on any transceiver, and it's a distinct code. It gives a little tone and stuff like that, and they can locate the crash site. So that is what everyone is always talking about when they say the black boxes. and I will include a picture of what a black box is so that you guys can see that and kind of have information, for water cooler talk, and you know what you're talking about. Uh, so, uh, Also, there's been a look into the practices of safety in Indonesia in the aviation community, as whether they're following the proper standards with maintenance and pilot training and things like that. So that's also could be a factor of what we call human factors. If these pilots were not properly trained, something happened in the cockpit with the air data that they were looking at, and they didn't know what to do, and then they make improper corrections, and then subsequently crashing the aircraft. So that could be also a problem as well, contributing factor as well. So we don't want to say that one thing in particular. I'm just talking about just based on preliminary information, and based on my aviation knowledge. I've been flying for 21 years. It's all I've ever done since I was 17 years old. So I have a pretty good background with aviation and what happens in the cockpit from a pilot standpoint, as well as an avionics technician and engineer before. Uh, so I have wealth of knowledge on this, and I'm pretty current on what's out there and what's in the cockpits and what's available. So with that, this concludes our this segment of Straight from the Cockpit. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Cabin Chat is next. Hello and welcome back to Straight from the Cockpit. I'm your host, Captain Berman Blaze McGee. And today, this is our segment for Cabin Chat. We're just going to be discussing about, talking about what's going on in the news and what's the hot topics everybody's kind of talking about in the cabin as they're flying along. And I gotta tell you, it is the elections. That is what's on everybody's mind, and what everybody's talking about is the U.S. elections, and we're here at the airport, so there's an airplane flying by, taxiing by. So just bear with us sometimes, because hey, we are an aviation show. We're on location, and we're always in the cockpit or in the cabin or by the tail rotor for our rotor wash. So from time to time we'll have interruptions from the radio, or we'll have airplanes taxiing by. But as I said, the elections are the big thing that's going on right now in the U.S. and all the rhetoric that's going on. I would like to first say my thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims in Pennsylvania from the synagogue that had the shooting incident there. And I gotta say, we as a nation have to, stay together, stick together, and be aware of our surroundings. It's just come to that. Everyone talks about the gun laws and things like that. And the one thing I say about people that advocate for more gun laws or stricter gun laws, the one thing I will say is I don't believe that will actually have an intended effect that you would think, because you have to realize the people that are committing these crimes are already breaking the law. So how can you say that creating another law will stop them from breaking that law? Their intent is to go out and kill people, so they're already intending to break the law anyway. So I can't say that creating more laws is actually going to deter or stop or make a significant impact on people that want to commit crimes. I mean, that's just a realistic nature of it. I don't like it when politicians and different uh, rights groups jump out as soon as there's an incident like this. They'll jump out and say, "Oh, we need more gun control," or someone else say, "No, we need less." I think the laws are fine just as they are. We just need to police and when I say police, I mean look after each other, uh, and be cognizant of what people are saying, their actions, and when you see something, you actually say something. Don't just take it as a passive. This person's just talking crazy. You never know what someone's mind state really is when they're saying something. So you have to take it. You have to take it for what they say, and act upon that and report it, because you could save so many lives like that, not by changing a law. It's going to save lives. Speaking up will save lives, and reaching out to your fellow neighbor, if regardless of what their religion is, their race, color, whatever, you know, uh, be friendly to one another, and get to know one another, and that in itself, is the way to combat these type of issues. So, but getting into the campaign and elections, uh, uh, it is just so polarizing right now. And I gotta say, as a registered Republican, I gotta say that I'm very disappointed in the way that the Republicans are handling these type of things when they arise, especially with candidates that are accepting endorsements from white supremacists and anti-Semitic types of groups, and you know I just don't know what your message you're trying to send or what you're standing for now, and that's disappointing to me, because I believe in strong businesses. I believe in low taxes. I believe in being budget conservative. But I gotta say, a lot of stuff, it's not matching up. I mean, we're spending lots of money in wars, in fighting in different countries and things like that. I think our defense budget is getting out of hand. Um, I, I'm a veteran. I served for 10 years in the U.S. Army and flew helicopters for 10 years for the Army. So I have that perspective as well as being a soldier and knowing budgets and things like that. So I think we're overspending outside of the country on our military. I definitely think we need to spend more money in our military, but domestically, uh, emphasizing better training facilities, better aircraft, more up to date aircraft with more bells and whistles, with better weaponry and things like that. Because that was one of the things I faced when we were in Iraq. We had the Vietnam era 1960s M60 as for our door gunners. So I would like to see improvements in things like that for our military guys, and better things for our veterans. I think veterans' health care and benefits as a whole, whether they retired or they did, uh, one contract, 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever they did, I think veterans definitely need much, much more attention than we're getting or have been given. So, with that being said, I kind of went off on a tangent there with the Republican Party, but the Democrats are even worse. I mean, they're just as bad. I mean, they literally only pander to get people's votes, and then they get in and they do nothing. It's the same thing year after year after year after year, after election after election after election. And I think the Republican Party is starting to become the same way. So I think a lot of supporters of Bernie Sanders, I like Bernie Sanders. I don't like all of his stuff because I think some of it is kind of out there, but I do like how he's just thinking of something different, because the same old stuff we've been doing is not working. So let's try something different. That's it. It's not complicated, people. So, uh, but then you have the extremists on both sides that are getting out of control, doing things. I don't have any issue with peaceful protesting, marching, viral campaigns, whatever. But I just say that everybody remain civil, do the right thing, don't hurt anyone, watch out for each other, and let's not, be sending bombs to each other and to other people, and to politicians, and different supporters or protesters. That's not the way to win your voice. And I'll say, in America, we're quick to point the finger at terrorists in other countries that do that type of stuff. So why on earth would you think it's going to work in the U.S., where we have so many freedoms, where you can voice your opinion and no one is going to bother you? Whereas you go into these other countries, you say something, you can have your tongue cut out, you could have your body chopped up and dissolved, just like what just happened in Turkey, of a Saudi citizen that spoke out against his government. I mean, that's the type of stuff that goes on in these other countries, and we as Americans kind of almost take this stuff for granted, and we don't realize how good we have it. But I also understand that it can be a lot better. It can get a lot better. We still have room to improve. The whole thing on the border with Mexico, I agree with the president, with the exception. I don't think this caravan is such a big deal, because they are the ones that's trying to legally go through the process of asylum, which means there is some checks, there is some balances to that. They're not just walking across the border. So to the president, I say, yes, build your wall, secure the border, and then enforce the laws. Force people to go through the process. And I would say, very simply, after you build a wall, make it as secure as possible, you're still going to have people that's going to get through. But at least you are showing that, hey, we're serious about immigration and the safety of our country. So build a daggum wall, get it done, then secure it, and then make sure that we have enough people to actually deal with the legal process. Because I can tell you, it does take a long time for people to go through the legal, correct way of doing it. So why not make sure we're staffed? The Immigration Bureau is staffed with enough people to actually accommodate the influx of applications and things like that after we secure the border with a wall. And we understand that it's not going to be 100% secure. You're still going to have people digging tunnels. You're going to have people still trying to cross on foot. But if you create a process and it's staffed properly to actually give responses within a year, I would say that you mandate that we put the responsibility on immigration to respond to applicants properly within 1 year of submitting their application. It's that simple. There's no reason there should be long lines and queues to wait for a piece of paper that someone can sit down and review and say, okay, either they need additional information, or it's an automatic dismissal for criminal records or things like that. It doesn't need to be years of waiting. That's just too much bureaucracy. And once they actually get their okay to come into the country, we have tremendous tech guys all over the country, particularly in California, that I'm sure they can come up with an app and a way to actually monitor the people that we allow into the country, and they have to check in via an app, and the minute they don't go and check in at the appropriate time on their app, it's automatically finds a way to track them down. ICE goes and picks them up and deport them. We just have to embrace technology and modernize our system. There's a way to handle this stuff. So I say on the election and campaigns, I hope people actually go out and vote, choose your candidates carefully, think about where they stand and what are they actually saying, look at their track record. If they've been, listen, politicians that's been in office for more than 10 years and still singing the same song, they're going to do something, they got to go. I mean, that's just the reality. These people are just sitting around doing absolutely nothing. Now, you may have one or two in there that's actually getting stuff done. I can't blanketly say that everybody that's been in Congress or Senate or in politics, mayors, governors, city councilmen, whatever, that they're all not good just because they've been in there for a long time. But I'll say a lot of them, they have been playing the song and dance for a long time. So look at their records, see what they actually been doing, and if they haven't been performing, don't vote for them. It's that simple. So again, I want to give a shout out to TYT, the Young Turks. I love watching their podcast and their online news show. I invite you to watch them as well. I think they're a great independent, progressive online news outlet. And I think they just kind of got welcomed into New York on TV, Washington, D.C., and I think 2 other locations. I'm not for sure, but congratulations on that. So thank you again for watching Straight from the Cockpit and our segment on Cabin Chat. Go out and vote, and safe travels. Hello and welcome back to Straight from the Cockpit. I'm your host, Captain Berman Blaze McGee, and this is our rotor wash for this week. As you notice, the rotor is not turning because guess what? There's no rotor wash on this segment today. This is all about War Eagle, Auburn University. We whooped Texas A&M butt yesterday, and I am happy. So, hey, there is no rotor wash. War Eagle. Safe travels. Thanks for watching another episode of Straight from the Cockpit.